Implied term. It was an implied term that the bulk of the goods would correspond to the sample. Implied term. Implied trust. Implied trusts require a party to prove an intended relationship exists without having an express trust agreement. Implied trust. Implied terms and conditions. A contract is an agreement between employee and employer setting out explicit and implied terms and conditions. Implied terms and conditions. Industrial development. China's rapid industrial development has been increased pollution problems. Industrial development. Industrial dispute. Air traffic control staff are involved in an industrial dispute over working hours. Industrial dispute. Industrial espionage. I worry about industrial espionage from our competitors. Industrial espionage. Industrial injury. He received £5,000 in compensation for an industrial injury. Industrial injury. Industrial property.
As you know, the layout, design and facilities of the new industrial property are different now.
Industrial property. Industrial relation. The company is attempting to improve its industrial relations. Industrial relations. Industrial tribunal. The industrial tribunal instructed the company to re-employ the sacked worker. Industrial tribunal. Industrial arbitration tribunal. The redundant worker decided to take his case to an industrial arbitration tribunal. Industrial arbitration tribunal. Joint account. Do you want a joint account or a separate account? Joint account. Joint beneficiary. Terry and Sarah are the joint beneficiaries of the will. Joint beneficiary. Joint committee. Joint committees are usually established with narrow jurisdictions and normally lack authority to report legislation. Joint committee. Joint discussions. An agreement was reached following joint discussions. Joint discussions. Joint heir. The deceased has not made a will and one of two or more joint heirs disclaims the inheritance. Joint heir. Joint liability. If parties have joint liability, then they are each fully liable for the performance of the relevant obligation. Joint liability. Joint management. Importantly, joint management will ensure they play a central role in managing these parks in the future. Joint management. Joint ownership. The freehold of the site is in joint ownership. Joint ownership. Joint tenancy. Joint tenancy and tenancy in common are two most common classifications of ownership of a property. Joint tenancy. Joint tortfeasors. In many cases, the joint tortfeasors are jointly and severally liable for the damages. Joint tortfeasors. Joint and several. Joint and several. Judgment creditor. Payment must be made to the judgment creditor. Judgment creditor. Judgment debtor. The judgment debtor was ordered by the court to pay his debts. Judgment debtor. Joint signatory.